All right, I believe we are off, featuring save file Madeline. Flesh is starting off using a number of bounces. As has probably been covered a couple of times, each player is going to be bouncing through this section because the jumping speed is slightly higher than the walking speed. So each one's going to be doing that as much as possible in the prologue, and then once they move into later chapters, they're going to be dashing as much as possible. I would expect with less than perfect time, we're probably going to see some very optimized dashing. Just about everything I expect is probably going to be covered. Whereas with Flesh, I imagine there's going to be more of a variety of strats. We might see some safer strats. We might see a little bit slower strats. We might not see quite as much optimization. But at that time, I would expect still that there's going to be a lot of consistent play going on. So far, both players coming out of the prologue, no bridge mishaps, and we're moving on to Chapter 1 where things start to get exciting. All right, starting off into Chapter 1, we're going to see Flesh going, and there's not usually a whole lot of difference you see in routes. Usually it's just a question of optimization here. You'll notice that both people are going to be doing a lot of wall bouncing, a lot of dashing off of these. And by doing that, they can circumvent a number of these areas just by avoiding a lot of these puzzles, by doing a lot of wave dashing, a lot of wall bouncing. Just about all the tech that you learn is going to be used to get past a lot of this trouble that you might have to take a lot of time going through. Both are about within one room of each other. Less than perfect moving on up into another one, so it looks like he might be just a little bit ahead right now, not too much. Looks like less than perfect, almost going for a strawberry there. Just for a second trying for it. A little bit of a mishap from Flesh there, but that's not too much of a setback. There aren't very many rooms in Chapter 1 where if you take a death, it's that much of a time loss. There's always, going to be a couple of seconds whenever you die. But since none of them are extremely long, you could take a death right at the end of one of the longer rooms, and it's still just going to be a few more seconds than at the very beginning. Whereas in some of the later chapters, some of the deaths can become very, very detrimental to your time. All right, finish up from less than perfect. Flesh has just 2 more rooms to go. We're going to see, like a lot of the players, instead of actually crossing over that chasm, they're actually just going to be doing a lot of neutral wall kicks to get up that left wall. We see that Flesh has finished as well. Looks like we're seeing a couple of adjustments in the option menu there. And Less Than Perfect is starting off as Chapter 2. Looks like both players are, at least in real time, about even with each other. From an in-game time perspective, Less Than Perfect is about 20 seconds ahead. We're going to see both players drop down to the well now. They're going to activate the Battle-In phase, which is going to activate these Dream Blocks. And then once these Dream Blocks are activated, they're going to be able to dash through them. Anytime you dash through this Dream Block, it's going to restore the player's dash. As you can see, looks like Less Than Perfect is still trying to go for all these strawberries. Very important that the strawberries are collected through the entire race. Any percent, 100% doesn't matter. You got to get those berries. That is just a joke, of course. Normally, you are probably not going to get too many berries in an any percent race. There are probably about 2 where you'll end up picking them up just because they happen to be on the faster strategy anyway. It can vary. I see things from as many as no berries to as many as about 4. But if you're intentionally going out of your way to get berries, you are probably losing some time. During the Battle-In chase here, you're going to see Battle-In exactly inputting the player's movements at about 3 seconds behind. As a result of that, you have to be kind of mindful about where you're positioning yourself, but on a speedrun, a lot of that is optimized, so Battle-In just becomes kind of an inconvenience rather than an actual threat. Ooh, a little bit of a hiccup there for Less Than Perfect. He's going to try that again. There we go, maneuvering past the spikes. We're going to go ahead and get these lock switches here. And you'll see, going so fast that Battlein really cannot keep up. There's very, very little threat from Battlein actually touching the player. If you make a mistake, you could end up pinning yourself in somewhere where that's a possibility. But for the most part, that's really not going to be much of a threat. Flesh is also coming out of the Battlein phase. No real mishaps on his end. You'll notice that on Less Than Perfect screen, it's just dash after dash after dash. There's very little stopping. Speed is maintained the entire time. Whereas while Flesh is playing very consistently, and he's playing very well, a lot of it is slightly less optimized to the point that there's not quite as much speed going on. So while this is looking like a fairly good run for Flesh, you'll notice that just strategically, based on how he's optimized his route and how he's running it, there's a little bit of downtime in between some dashes here and there. That is a finish for Less Than Perfect on Chapter 2. He's going to be moving into Chapter 3, the Resort. This can be a really difficult chapter for a lot of players, and it can be where the run starts really getting kind of technical. Not only do you have to watch your timing on your jumps now, you know, you're not allowed to just jump whenever you want to anymore because of these dust patches that are going. But if you end up dying, then you have to kind of have a backup strat because the dust is going to be in a different place than you expect from when you first enter a room. And for that reason, it can be a big barrier in time for a lot of newer racers. Again, for racers that are experienced, it's not going to be that big of a hang-up, and you can see Less Than Perfect, again, perfectly optimized here. Everything is absolutely planned and calculated going through. Everything is, you know, sometimes just by the slightest amount he's able to squeeze through. But he's able to go through and he's able to do it in a perfectly optimized manner. Flesh also picking up a berry. Look at that. Strawberry race. We can see him moving through here. The players are going to move through a number of sections, getting keys to unlock doors. After going through their next key, they're going to meet Oshiro. They're going to navigate this mess room, and then they're going to have to clean up the mess room. I see we're still getting berries. All right. I'm going to be curious to see how many berries Less Than Perfect end up with here. I don't know if the players have an agreement or if this is just like muscle memory from doing a berry percent, but we're going to end up with seeing a lot more than usually would, I expect. Oh! Missing the key. Fortunately, he's able to retry that room and pop back into the entry point. There are going to be a number of points where players will actually deliberately retry a room because it saves time. Later on in this chapter, they're going to get a key at the end of a long sequence. And rather than dash all the way back, it's actually easier as soon as you touch it to go ahead and just retry the room. Saves you a little bit of time. You'll see that also a couple of times in Temple, not too many. We can see perfect navigation in the mess room. And he's actually opting to go to the top right first. This is a strategy that I don't often see. Normally, based on where you go, Oshiro is going to pop up in predetermined locations based on how many messes you've cleaned. So for that reason, most players usually opt to go to the bottom right first. I'm wondering if the reason he's gone top right is, again, for strawberry strats. There we go. Flesh has managed to talk to Oshiro as well, and we're going to see he's opting to go for what I would call the more traditional bottom right route. So there's going to be a fair amount of divergence here. Okay, Less Than Perfect touching his second Oshiro. So he's going to be, every time after you clean up one of these things, you'll notice that they don't appear in any of the subsequent rooms, which can really, depending on the order you go in, somewhat significantly change the layout. Like, you'll notice that when Less Than Perfect was going, he had a number of books on the floor where there might otherwise be dust, and if you'll watch Flesh, you'll see that when he goes through those same rooms, they're going to look a little bit different. There we go. Flesh working to clean up his second mess. Less Than Perfect has just finished his second mess, so he's going to be looking to find Oshiro that third time up in the top. There he is. There we go. Looks like he's having a little bit of difficulty navigating, but he made it there. And he's going to be going through at a fairly decent pace. For an any percent for his PB, this would be a little bit on the slow side, but again, doing these berry strats, I expect, has significantly changed his PB and optimizations, and I imagine that muscle memory is taking over since really, in order to do this, like, you just practice again and again and again. So muscle memory does take over to a degree. Alright, so far no players really had a major mishap in these rooms, so both of them generally just get to use their strategies for the first part of the room instead of having to worry about any respawn strats. Less Than Perfect moving on to the lock switch. Now that he's cleaned up the mess, he's going to move to the Master Suite. Once he gets there, he will move out onto the roof, and then there will be a brief chase section with Oshiro before the end of the chapter. The Oshiro section is probably one of the hardest sections for newer players. Oshiro is going to appear on the screen level with the player at the time, and then dash towards them after a brief delay. Because of that, timing Oshiro combined with timing the dust balls, combined with moving efficiently, can really be a lot of things to manage for a newer player. But again, once you've been speedrunning for a little while and kind of get it optimized and down, it really ends up being more of an inconvenience. You know, maybe something to play around if you accidentally have a mishap, rather than anything that's really truly a huge threat. Okay, Less Than Perfect's in his last room before the Master Suite, so he's about to move on to the final section, having a little bit of a hiccup there. And Flesh is following along behind. He's a couple rooms back, not too many. After this, he's going to go through one more room. Then there's the infamous bridge to cross that can be a little difficult for newer players, and then he'll be more or less at the same spot. Here is the Oshiro section. You'll notice that when optimized, Oshiro is really just kind of something to wave goodbye to as you keep on moving. In a lot of rooms, you'll be going so fast that Oshiro really doesn't have any hope of catching the player. And even in some of the longer ones, it's optimized in such a way that you're not going to be anywhere near him when it comes time to actually do your dash. There we go, just about 3 more rooms for Less Than Perfect here. Still a couple of hiccups. Fortunately, if this is a room to die in, dying at the beginning obviously makes it a lot less of a time loss. And if you die in this particular room, there's not a whole lot of change exactly in the strategy, because you're not really worried about the timing of the dust. If you die in this one, it can really end up, it can be a big upset for a lot of players. The dust timing can really throw off strategies. Once you've thrown off the initial strategy, Oshiro's timing can really be thrown off. It can really get super difficult for everybody. All right, Less Than Perfect is finished. He's going to be moving on to Golden Ridge, which is going to feature wind as a major mechanic. Flesh still has a couple of rooms to finish up as a resort, but it's a very good time so far. It looks like he's playing very consistently. Again, you can see that usual movement from Less Than Perfect. Just about every dash is planned out, so as soon as he lands, he's exactly ready to do the new one. Or in a lot of cases, he doesn't actually land. In a lot of cases, since he still has his dash, he's going to go ahead and just immediately dash back to the ground and keep going. I see we've picked up another strawberry. That is certainly not part of a standard any % route. So he's going to have quite a nice bite at the end of the run. You can see there's the wind. Sometimes it's going to be going against the player, which is going to make forward movement very difficult. They're going to have to generally dash to get anything done, or they could just barely move against it by walking. And sometimes the wind will be going with the player, in which case it's going to push them along and they'll be able to get quite a lot farther than they otherwise would. Flesh has just finished up his Chapter 3. And I see he's also picked up a couple of berries, so it's just a berry hunt for everybody. Getting a little bit of trouble there. You'll notice that by jumping away from the spikes, as long as you're not actually moving towards them, the spikes can't kill you. And as a result of that, Less Than Perfect is able to do a little bounce and kind of jump off of the edge of the wall where the spikes are and jump through them. And doing that, there are a couple of spots in the run that you can circumvent a couple of puzzles and save, in some cases, a good amount of time, in some cases, just a little bit of time. Couldn't quite make that auto-scroll skip there. You can wait for a little bit of a safer strategy of having the block push you right at the end, or you can try and do it here by catching it right at the very end. You can just land on the ledge, get your jump back, be able to make it across. It's a very, very difficult trick to pull off, and for only doing it in 2 tries, that's very good. Okay, Flesh is moving along. He's just finished getting his lock switch there. He's going to be moving along these clouds. Ooh, a little bit of a hiccup there for him. Less Than Perfect also having a couple of spots of trouble. The big issue with this run, or at least with this particular chapter, is that in the first couple of chapters, if you happen to have a mistake, it's not necessarily the end of the world. You have some flexibility in being able to save it, and while it might be a little bit of time loss and it might throw you off kind of your optimized route, it's not going to be too bad of an inconvenience. Whereas the big issue for this particular, oh my goodness, look at all of those jumps there. Able to completely skip the scroll block, and by just jumping on the edges of those ledges, able to make it across. Anyway, in Golden Ridge, with the wind moving with you, a lot of times, if you end up messing up your jump even a little bit, oftentimes you're not really going to be able to recover it. So you'll probably see a lot more precision necessary in this particular chapter compared to the first few. Most of the later chapters do have that requirement of precision. Okay, we're into the final area for Less Than Perfect. The wind is going to be blowing very hard now, to the point that you really... you can walk and push against the wind, but you're really not going to be getting much of anywhere with it. You really do have to be dashing. For a lot of people, this could be an issue, but again, when it's optimized, you can see Less Than Perfect is moving through. There might not as well be any wind. As long as he's dashing, you don't really notice it quite as much. And there we go. He's got just a couple of rooms to go through. I would say that he's passed probably most of the difficult parts of this last area, though, so he's going to be coming through. He's got this one room, and then the last room is going to be a long one to go through, and he will be done with the chapter. And finished. Flesh, meanwhile, is at that second auto-scroller. Kind of the second long horizontal room with one of those. He's moving through at a fairly good pace. He's only been in the chapter for 2 minutes and 50 seconds, which is a pretty good time for a 46-minute PB. And you'll notice you don't see quite as many wall dashes or anything like that. So while the strategies are consistent, they're not quite as optimized. And while that's only a second or two in each room, it really adds up. You know, there are numerous rooms in a run. And if every single one is done, you know, just a second or two faster, that time really can add up to be very significant. Less Than Perfect is in the temple now. You'll see these red bubbles. And the red bubble is going to move you in the same direction until it either hits a wall or until you dash out of it. He's already gone ahead and skipped a couple of rooms by jumping across a chasm there and then jumping across some crystals in order to get his key a little bit quicker. Flesh has moved into the final area of Chapter 4, trying to evade those snowballs. This is probably one of the hardest rooms in Chapter 4 here. It's very long, there's a lot of precision jumping. There's a couple of different routes, but just about all of them involve doing these little 1-pixel jumps. And there we go, Flesh made it across. Fantastic for him. Less Than Perfect is moving along. We're going to see a key skip here. You can dodge back with that bubble and end up inside one of those little secret platforms. There's a bubble inside of it. It's taken by pretty much everybody. If anyone is familiar with doing speed routing, then I assume that they know about that. Occasionally, you'll see somebody who's a little bit newer to the run that's maybe doing their own routing, and so they're not familiar with the bubble, or for just some other reason. You know, maybe if they're just a little unfamiliar, if they're not quite trusting the timing, or if they just forget about it, which definitely does happen to newer runners, then you might see them end up getting the key. But for the most part, once people have been running for even a little bit, they're generally aware of that. Same thing coming up. One of the biggest skips in the game is Search Skip, where instead of getting a number of keys that they have to go exploring for, players are simply going to do a reverse dash and go right over a line of tentacles. And it's a huge skip. I think it saves anywhere between 50 seconds and 2 minutes, depending on how optimized you have it getting those keys. And again, anybody that's been running for even a little while and has kind of checked their routing is going to be doing that. Flesh is also going to be attempting to cross the crystals. A little bit of a hiccup there. It can be a little bit of a difficult jump. You have to really jump on the left side of the platform there. There we go. He made it across. Now that we've gone into the mirror, Less Than Perfect is going to be navigating around all these seekers, and this can also be a very difficult part of the run for newer racers. You're going to see Less Than Perfect is probably going to be using these whenever it is rewarding to do so. You can jump off of their head and get your dash back, and also maintain your momentum, which is very relevant if you are doing a lot of wave dashing or hyper dashing. There we go. You'll notice that while the seeker can hit these lock switches for you, if you knock them out, they will have an explosion when they come back to life. And as a result of that, you can leave them just near a lock switch after hitting them, and they'll break it for you as well. Alright, Flesh is doing his first skip there, going up inside the secret bubble. Meanwhile, Less Than Perfect has hit his search, and it looks like he is maybe hunting a couple of strawberries here. I'm not entirely certain. This is not a standard route that I'm familiar with. Flesh is just about to enter his mirror. I am curious where Less Than Perfect is going to end up here. There we go, he has done that, so it looks like he's going to be going and getting a key. I'm not sure if he's going to get 1 key, 2 key. There are 3 keys. You only need 2 to move on the normal way, but a third one is necessary. I believe a third one gets you a strawberry, but I'm not overly familiar with it. A little bit of a hiccup there. Flesh has fallen into his unraveling, so he's going to be going through those seeker rooms as well, and then he's going to be moving on to his search skip. Though we're not seeing much of a skip here from Less Than Perfect. We're really seeing more of the key search, so for those of you that have not seen much of the actual game, this is what the normal part would entail, albeit much faster. So you'll see him getting that one door, there's the second door, and now he'll go through and get this bubble. And this would be the traditional route. You could normally do a reverse dash over this. When Flesh comes to it, I imagine he will do that. But that would be the traditional way to get the key and move through. Less Than Perfect's going to go through a couple of rooms here with Seekers. None of them are particularly threatening, though there could be always the chance for a hiccup here or there. And then he's going to be moving on to the rescue step. Theo has been imprisoned in a crystal, and as a result, the player has to carry him through a number of rooms in order to get him out. So you'll see when you're carrying him, you're not able to dash, and for that reason, players are generally going to throw him and then immediately dash afterwards. So we're going to see a lot of micromanagement in carrying Theo, dashing while letting him go, catching him mid-dash, avoiding these seekers, hitting lock switches. Again, for this reason, the end chapters, or the end sections of each chapter can really be very difficult for players because there's usually a lot of things going on. Fortunately, once you've done this again, being able to get a good route down, especially in this chapter, having a good route can help you avoid these seekers. If you are not really routed to avoid the seekers, they can really cause upsets. You'll see there. If the seeker ends up kind of out of the area you expect, they can really throw a wrench into the works. Flesh is coming up to the key skip here. If you look at Flesh's screen, you'll see he's going to hop across this. He's going to dash back towards the wall and use its momentum to jump through. And look at that. Skipping, getting all of those keys. That is a major, major time save. Ooh, Less Than Perfect just got nipped on the heels going out of that door. You can also use these seekers as a momentum boost once you've hit them. When they respawn, they're going to release that large explosion of energy, and if you are within that radius, then it will actually bounce the player a very significant distance. Okay, Flesh is just about coming up to the rescue here. He's got just this room to go. And there we go. He's stepping into his Theo rescue as well. Meanwhile, Less Than Perfect is on the last room where you can actually die. There is one more room after this. I suppose you could die in this, but it's very difficult to do. You basically have to have Theo get crushed by one of these blocks. A number of pulses is going to be coming out periodically that you can dash through. You can see Less Than Perfect gets through it very, very quickly. Less Than Perfect is going to be moving on to his reflection stage now, where the player is going to be going through a number of rooms. It's actually the only chapter where you really have a large amount of choice in which room you want to go through each time. You'll see there will be a top and a bottom room in a number of areas in the first section. Most of the players have a specific route that they want to do. Based on how Less Than Perfect is going today, I think he might either have some strawberry muscle memory, or he might just be having a little bit of fun if he and Flesh talked about just doing a couple of unusual things beforehand. So he might end up taking a little bit different route than the standard. It'll be interesting to see what way he chooses to go here. Looks like he's maybe opting for Lake Skip. He is opting for Lake Skip. And Madeline appears to be having a small tantrum there. And he is not doing Lake Skip any longer. No, he might maybe still doing it. A little confused as to what I'm seeing here. Alright. Looks like a little bit of a hiccup. Meanwhile, Flesh is moving through his Theo section. Again, you'll see not quite as much dashing, not as much raw speed as in Less Than Perfect, but generally still a fairly consistent area for him. You see that he's electing to do a slightly different strategy here. There we go. There's the button. He's going to throw it onto that platform and narrowly avoid that Seeker. And can we make it out? Yes, just barely. And now he's going to be going through these pulses as well. When routed out, you can generally dash through the pulses and not be slowed down, but you'll see occasionally players getting buffeted back a little bit. Less Than Perfect opting to get a nice little dash at that wall, using these Kevin blocks, as they've been fondly called by the community, after the person that voices them. And now we're getting into the area where Less Than Perfect actually has options on which way he wants to go. He can go up or he can go down in a lot of these rooms. A little bit of a hiccup there. Flesh has entered his reflection. Is going through the first area where in the cutscene you would see there would be a short discussion with Battleline before Battleline would noticeably hurl the player all the way down the mountain. So this is supposed to reflect kind of the very bottom section of the mountain. Alright, both players moving through it. There we go. This is actually one of my favorite rooms. By bouncing off of these blocks here, they are able to get these lock switches. And it's not necessarily the most difficult room, and I'm not even sure that it is an optimized room for time save, but I just always really enjoyed going that way. Just because you don't often see them used a lot in the speedrun. There are a couple of rooms where you're going to bounce off them, but a lot of times players can skip them by using clever dashing. Alright, Flesh is moving along so that he can get to his sequence of choice areas. I imagine he's probably going to take a little bit more of a standard route. Less Than Perfect is moving on. Oh, Flesh not quite able to make it there. Again, you are able to skip these bouncers here, and he is able to get it on the second try, but if you end up not having your dash on one of these rooms, then you can really just have trouble moving on afterwards. Less Than Perfect is coming into the final room before the transition. Then he's going to go through a number of rooms with Battleline in the background. It's going to be fairly ominous, at least if this was a normal game. Would build a lot of tension. You can see there's her hair kind of receding from the player as they chase it. Then we're going to go into the Battleline fight, where the player is going to have to hit Battleline a number of times in every room before being able to move on to the next one, all while she's throwing either lasers or energy pulses at the player. Like usual, since it's the final area of the chapter, and because it is a little bit more technically precise and demanding, for newer runners it can be a little bit on the tricky side. Less Than Perfect is going through. There is a skip that players can do. Again, I imagine when Flesh gets to it, we'll probably see that skip. But Less Than Perfect opting to go around. He's going through the water elevator now, and then he is going to essentially beat his Battleline fight. He's just got to go and ride this Kevin block for a number of seconds. There we go. Flesh is now saying hello to Granny, and he is going to be going through the same area of Battlefine's hair receding. And Less Than Perfect is now at his Battleline fight. You'll notice there is an immediate change in pacing here. It can be a super climactic part for a normal run. And I feel for a lot of racers, it's also a fairly climactic chapter as well. There's just a lot of quick dashes, a lot of avoiding the laser. In a lot of rooms, the player is quick enough that Madeline may actually be able to hit her counterpart before a laser ever goes off, but there's going to be a couple of rooms where if you don't have it optimized, just honestly, if you don't have it optimized in general, it can be a really difficult area to go through. There's a lot to manage. Timing matters in a great deal. It really can be similar to the Oshiro section in that if you don't have it all timed out, it can become a real headache for the player. Flesh has also entered his battle line fight as well. And we'll see probably some similarities in routing here. Again, Less Than Perfect is probably going to be a little bit more optimized in his dashes, but we're going to see probably a similar level of speed in that Battle Line is not going to be getting off too many lasers unless it's one of these long sequences like when you have to use the feather to get through. And even then, with how the player is moving, there's not really much of a threat of the laser hitting. This is probably the first room where there is a threat, since you can either skip this area or have to bounce off of that. And you can end up inside of the laser. In a lot of cases, it's not too bad. There we go. He's going to go one more screen, and then he's going to have a little heart-to-heart with Battlin before the second part of this fight. Flesh having a little bit of trouble with the laser there as well, so a couple of hiccups for each player in this section. All in all, it's still been a fairly good reflection for Flesh. Look at that, just narrowly dodging the ledge there on Flesh's end. And Less Than Perfect has stepped into the little heart-to-heart talk here. Now we see in the second section there's going to be a lot more of these blocks moving along. A lot more of them affecting the timing of the player. This can really be the big hiccup section. If you end up off, the player can end up in areas where they're not quite timed with how Madeline's doing her laser, or they're not quite timed with how these blocks are moving. There can be a lot of really clunky sections where the player is stuck and waiting, or a lot of sections where they end up dashing in places they don't expect to. Again, optimizing and having a route down can be very, very good for that, but if you die and end up coming into the room in a way you don't quite expect, it can cause a couple of hiccups for runners. So far, no real trouble for Less Than Perfect, who is going into his final room here, where he's going to have to dodge a number of lasers. Just a little bit of a dip up too quick there. Flesh has entered his second half of the fight as well. And just one more laser to dodge. Ooh! That is unfortunately a large time loss. Since you have a ton of the room to go through, having to die right there at that last laser is a killer. Okay, Flesh going through. He's got just a couple more rooms to go. He's going through fairly quick. Couple of hiccups, but that can happen in the reflection fight fairly easily. He's got 2 more rooms to go. This one and then that one that Less Than Perfect just went through, and then he is also going to be on his way out. You'll notice Less Than Perfect's hair color has changed. The player now has 2 dashes for the entirety of the summit, and as a result, you can see a number of really interesting mechanics that allow you to get a lot of speed. Most of the summit is going to be just dash after dash after dash, which is, I suppose, similar to the rest of the run, but having a second one in your arsenal really allows you to do things that would not be even remotely possible otherwise. From a real-time perspective, the players are only about 20 seconds apart from each other. From an in-game timer, Less Than Perfect is about 40 seconds ahead. We're going to see the player is going to go through little snippets of every additional section from all of the previous chapters. Right now they're going through kind of the reflection section. You'll see the same kind of blocks. You'll see those same crystals that they're going through. After this, obviously, it's going to be the city. Then they're going to go through the dream area. Then they're going to go through their hotel, Golden Ridge, temple. And finally, they'll be at the actual summit, where the player is going to go through a number of flag checkpoints with a lot of precision dashing through setups that really kind of encourage you to dash in certain ways. There's definitely circumvention you can do, but a lot of it kind of just comes down to how quickly you can get that precision in. So it's a nice little sort of resolution area where the player can use 2 dashes to trivialize a lot of what was very difficult in the first area. Okay, Flesh coming up behind. So far, a good start for him as well. Less Than Perfect is moving through most of these rooms in a fairly optimized manner. Ooh, a little bit of hiccup there for Flesh right at the end of his first section. You'll see these purple orbs that that Battleline is in, and the player has to touch each one in each of the final rooms. Doing so gives you a little bit of a boost and gives your dash back. Once you've done it in every area, then the player's lifted up into the next section. So Flesh has now entered 500 meters. Less Than Perfect is entering the 1,000, where we get to revisit the dream blocks. He is through the lock switches, moving on through these. Something that isn't covered in the original game is that if you jump coming out of one of these dream blocks, you get a slight height boost, as well as a little bit more speed. And you saw Less Than Perfect use that right there. There are a number of places where the player will use that. This section probably feels the fastest to a lot of players. You're just able to constantly be dashing. Every time you go through one of these dream blocks, getting your dash back means that you're really just staying in the air doing a lot of this precise dashing here and there. And as a result, it can feel very quick and very fluid. Even for players that are a little bit less experienced, it can still feel extremely fluid. It's just a very fun section of the race to go through. Looks like Flesh is trying for a wall bounce there. There we go, managed to get the wall down. Less Than Perfect has moved into the 1500 section to Flesh's 1000. This can be a very, very difficult section. This is some of the most difficult areas in the game for a lot of newer players. It's just these long rooms of being able to get the timing right on this dust. You have to get your dashes perfect. There's very little room for air. As you can see, Less Than Perfect, hey, getting a nice ultra dash there. And is able to go through much of this and really almost not even notice the dust as he's going through. It certainly affects his timing, but it doesn't look like he's concerned by much of any of it. Alright, Flesh moving through his 1000 section here. Less Than Perfect is in the final room of his 1500s. A little bit of a hiccup there. He's going to go ahead and re-enter the room. Again, based on that timing change. Sometimes when you're in a resort section, leaving the room and coming back in how you're used to can actually be a little bit faster than throwing your head at the wall and trying to get it with the new timing. Just because sometimes the new timing really just doesn't work with the strats that you're used to. There we go, Flesh having a little hiccup there, but able to correct it. And he's opted to go up through the top room, which is a little bit on the standard side for a run. So he's gone ahead and gone through the cloud section, collected a nice berry as well. Be interested to see if he's going to get another berry in this one. And he does, excellent. We're going to see possibly one of the bigger auto-scroll skips in the game here. If he chooses to, he can slide through this, yep. And by doing a dash off of that and then jumping across, you can skip the entire rest of the auto-scroller, land on that far platform, and then do a little wall dash there to skip and save a lot of time. Flesh having a little bit of a hiccup in his 1500. He's making good time here. He'll be coming to the end of it in just a couple more rooms. There is another berry for Less Than Perfect. Oh, just a little bit of a hiccup dash, just a second too early there. Flesh going through one of the scarier rooms, very long one. He's able to navigate through it. Now he's just got this, and then he's got a little underground that he's got to dash through. There we go. Inside the hotel, he'll dash through this section. Then he's got this one area, and that is going to be it for his 1500. Seems like both players are generally maintaining about a section of 500 ahead. So Flesh is just going to be entering 2000 when Less Than Perfect enters his 2500. Ooh, very close for Flesh there. Narrow avoidance of the dust. And it looks like Less Than Perfect is opting to not use the orb. The orb is a method of transportation in the past, and Less Than Perfect does not need it. There we go, dashing a lot of those dash blocks. Going to be able to use them to maintain his speed as he gets through that one room. We're going to see a nice little wall bounce here to get his key and save having to go through a room down below to be able to get a bubble to get up there. Alright, Flesh is going at his auto-scroller skip as well. Looks like he's going to go ahead and ride the directional block the entire way. So he's taking a little bit of a safer approach to this. And there we go, he is through. So you can see the more traditional way that players might do that. Less Than Perfect is into his final room. And there we go. He is moving on to his 3000 section. As mentioned, you're going to see a number of very, very long rooms here. There's not going to be any screen transitions. Instead, what you're going to see is a number of flags, and each flag is going to serve as a checkpoint. Sometimes speedrunners will skip some of these. You don't usually see too many of them skipped, but you might see anywhere between, I don't know, I'm going to say about 2 and 6 offhand. 2 to 6 flags end up getting skipped. It really just depends on how aggressively you want to push it. Sometimes skipping a flag can save you, 2 or 3 seconds. Sometimes saving a flag can save you, less than half a second. So it really just depends. You'll see there's a flag being skipped there for Less Than Perfect as he moves along. So there is some danger to it, but again, if you are used to optimizing the route and you are in a position where you're feeling comfortable with it, you can definitely skip some of these. Flesh has just entered his 2500 here. Meanwhile, Less Than Perfect is moving on. He's got a nice little upwind working with him here. You'll notice an upwind and a downwind in this section, and when the wind is pushing you down, it functions exactly like you would think based on Golden Ridge. The player is going to have a lot of trouble jumping naturally, they're going to get pushed down walls faster, whereas when it's an upwind, you'll notice that the falling is just a little bit slower. It can feel like a very floaty section of the game, and compared to the rest of it, it certainly is. Here's probably the most dangerous flag of them all for a lot of people, the lock switch, and he is able to do it without any trouble whatsoever. That can be a very big time loss if people end up, for whatever reason, dying after getting all the lock switches and having to navigate through that last area of crystal. It can be a really, really significant amount of time. Right, Flesh is moving through his temple without too much trouble here. He's got just another couple of rooms to go. You'll notice, as mentioned earlier, a lot of this is very precise and very precision dashing. It's layered in such a way that you don't really have a whole lot of choice for how you dash in a lot of these sections. It's really just a question of how quickly and efficiently can you pull it off. Less Than Perfect had to go back for just a second there. Looks like he didn't quite like the approach. And he is going to ignore Battle Line. Apparently they are on some rocky terms, and he is just going to go off by himself and do it, as well as skip the flag. So we're seeing some definite creativity on Less Than Perfect through it here. Meanwhile, Flesh has entered his 3000 section. We're going to see just a couple more flags here. Less Than Perfect is right about at the end. He's on flag 4 now. He's going to flag 3 here. Alright, he's got just this one last area to get through. Just this one jump here, and although flag 1 is the final area of the game, it's actually mechanically much simpler than any of the other flags, so he's just going to be doing a relatively light section of dashing here. And there we go. He has hit the summit with a 39:49. Great time. We'll go ahead and swap over to Flesh here, who is going through his down section right now. So far going quite well for him. We're going to see, I'm not sure if we're going to be interviewing Less Than Perfect or if we're just going to keep focusing on Flesh for now. I'll get word in a moment on that. But definitely a great run for Less Than Perfect there. Flesh is also having a very good run. Flesh's PB at the moment is a 46:51, if speedrun.com is to be believed. And as a result of that, with where he is now at only 41 minutes and 15 seconds, it could very easily be a PB. This last section probably will not take 5 minutes. It could, just depends on how many hiccups end up happening in it. But you could very easily see a PB from him as he goes through this. Okay, moving into a couple more dangerous flags here. He's going to be doing his lock switches as well, which can be a large hiccup for a number of players. There we go, able to make it through. And he gets it, first try. He's navigating the kind of the precision hallways of Crystal. Not really a whole lot of options in how you dash through that, as mentioned. He's going to keep on going. There's the bounce. And he is through another one. There we go. Moving on in those flag. Okay, he's taking the safe flag there. Perfectly fine with a time like this. If he's shooting for a PB, I would probably be just going nice and safe. He's well ahead of his time at this moment. I'm not going to say a PB is assured because until the mountain's climbed, anything can happen. But I would imagine he's probably feeling pretty satisfied right now with the time. Okay, there is flag 4, just a little bit to go. He's probably within about 1.5 minutes of finishing, depending on how long it can take him. Oh, a little bit of a hiccup there. Sometimes you can have just a little bit of trouble making those jumps. Over on Less Than Perfect side, we're seeing a little bit of interesting cutscene shenanigans. Oh, a little bit of a hiccup from Flesh there going on to his flag 1. If you end up jumping too much of that last section, Madeline runs out of energy just before being able to make the jump. You can still end up doing it, but it's very difficult. There we go. Oh, I've spoken too soon. Let's see if we can get it on this one. There's the jumping up and over. There we go. There's flag 1. Flash is less than 30 seconds away. Probably less than 20 at this point. I never really check that last flag's time. I'm always just so focused on the end. And he has done it with a 44:05 as long as his speedrun.com time is up to date. That is a great new PB for him. GG to both racers. Looks like Flesh is going to be jumping on in here for a interview. I'll go ahead and pull him in now. Flesh, congratulations on your run. Is that a new PB? Looks like it was a PB of over 2 minutes based on speedrun.com.
Yeah, so my PB on speedrun.com was is an older one. My current PB was 45:32. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the time overall, but that ending was super dirty and it could have been easily a sub 44, and I tilted literally when I failed that one jump 2 times in a row, very stupidly.
Yeah, the flag from 2 from the flag to 1, that can get you if you're really trying to push the timer. I saw that.
Yeah. The thing is, I never died at that spot where I died today 2 times. Like, I normally do one climb jump and then the normal wall jump, and today I tried to do an immediate wall jump, which is impossible. So it's super unfortunate, but but I still improved, so I should look forward.
Yeah, it was an absolutely great run. Was there a part that you felt was particularly smooth, something that seemed to go a lot better than it usually does?
Not the part in particular, but overall my the first chapter 2 to 4 was like chapter 2, I think I saved 3 seconds to my gold split, and compared to my PB, I think I saved there 15 seconds. But overall, my chapter 2, 3, and 4 were pretty good, but not the best, technically, you can say.
Okay, just a lot of general consistency.
Yeah, I was really happy with all the times in these 3 chapters. And then, oh, and I forgot, chapter 6 was my first subs 8 minutes, chapter 6.
Oh, congratulations on that. It's got to
Yeah.
be very satisfying.
Was really happy with the time there. I played very good chapter 6 as well.
Yeah, it seems like it was a great run overall. It definitely shows. Congratulations on a new PB. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think let's check really quick. Yeah, my death count is 68, which is like also a new record. My older death record was 72, I think. So yeah, I'm improving in like not dying as well.
Congratulations on getting that consistency down and getting the timer down as well.
Yeah, was a pretty cool run.
Well, thank you very much for joining me. I think that that's about all I have today. Again, great race from you, and Less Than Perfect has picked up a win. I don't know if we're going to be interviewing him. I haven't gotten any word of that, so I believe that is the end. I'm going to take just a moment to verify that.
I just asked him in the tournament Discord in our group.
Okay, well, we'll find out momentarily if he would like to get in. Looks like he is collecting a couple of strawberries here and there, going through the temple.
Ah, I see. Did LTP went for anything very interesting, like he normally does?
You could say that. I haven't actually seen any of LTP's runs prior. There were a couple of strats that seemed a little bit unconventional to me, and certainly a lot of berry hunting going on.
Yeah. Like, I've got also one berry I normally don't get in the hotel, because I failed, like, the run room. I think it's the last one of the tower section in the big mess. I failed the hyper, and a bunch of big mistakes were made, but somehow I survived and collected the berry down, like in this one pit. I don't know how I've got this, but I've got it. And I survived it. That was the thing that surprised me the most.
Congratulations on making it through. I haven't seen anything from Less Than Perfect, so I assume that that is going to be just about it.
Yeah.
For those of you that have been watching.
He also said he's not going to want to have an interview.
Oh, well, that makes it nice and easy then. Thank you very much, those of you joining me. This has again been Flesh177 versus Less Than Perfect. Great times from both of them. New PB for Flesh and a win for Less Than Perfect. And we are going to get going. This has been Rack the Kitty on commentary. For those of you interested in Super Metroid, there's a 2018 Any% tournament happening right now on twitch.tv Speed Gaming 2. Otherwise, I will see you all later for some more Celeste action. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Yeah, bye from my side as well.